Jennifer Hesse disappeared on the night she
Happy Monday, everyone. John Lorden here with another episode of Brain Scratch, Case Cracked. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you had a wonderful weekend. So before we jump into today's case, I want to do an update on a previous episode that we covered. That was the case of Karina Vetrano. Some of you might remember that is a young woman who went out for a run, was murdered, and when we're looking for case cracked stories, we don't always find stories where the court trial is done and the conviction is final and all that. We're really looking for the big linchpin to what solved that case for law enforcement. So sometimes we'll run those stories even though we don't have a hard conclusion. At this point, I think we've got a much firmer conclusion. It's pretty much what I was expecting, but it did go through a little more than I anticipated instead of the court process. So let's just jump over to the screen share, and this is from abcnews.go.com. Man convicted of killing woman outrunning in NYC park. A man was convicted Monday of killing a woman outrunning near her New York City home in a case that stirred urban fears, helped change the state's DNA investigation rules, and raised questions about race and police procedures. Karina Vetrano's loved ones erupted in cheers as a Queens jury delivered in Chanel Lewis's retrial, convicting him of murder and sexual abuse in Vetrano's 2016 death. A previous trial ended in a hung jury in November. The second jury deliberated for only 5 hours, staying into the night to deliberate. Lewis is set to be sentenced April 17th and faces up to life in prison. So if you're not familiar with that case, I'll have a link in the section below that says Karina Vetrano update. The top link there is a YouTube link that's to the episode of Case Cracked, so you can learn more about that. Of course, I'll also have this article link down there if you want to read the whole thing. Yeah, it was interesting to me. I was kind of keeping up to date on this story as it was going, but jumping on here and saying, hey guys, there was a mistrial and they're going to try it again, I just didn't think like it was a substantial enough update. So at this point, we have a conviction. I'm almost certain that there's going to be appeals. As a matter of fact, this article is already talking about the probability of appeals being filed. So is this really the end of this case? I'm sure the defense would say no. The prosecution would probably say, we hope so. We got a conviction and the jury, did their job. But there might be some more hoops that this case still goes through. So if anything really drastic happens with it, like a complete reversal or something like that, which I really don't expect to see in a case like this, but if something like that happens, we'll be sure to keep you updated here on Case Cracked, because sometimes the cases might be solved by law enforcement, but the courtroom is a whole different ball of wax. All right, today's case, I want to give a big thank you to Christy Arnhart for putting the research and writing today's case. Also, before I start this one, I just want to touch on something. Some people seem to be upset for some reason that this show is scripted. I don't know why. Case Cracked has always been scripted. I actually used to hold the pages and read it right off the pages for you guys. I think they feel like they're finding something out when they notice that I'm reading. I'm literally reading my screen that's right below the camera. I was doing that because when I was reading the pages, my head was down so far I was hearing complaints from you guys. So first of all, I don't know what the problem is with scripted content. It just means that more pre-production work went into it. Second of all, this show has always been scripted. For me to learn the cases as intimately as I do for Searchlight and Brain Scratch, I knew that when I was going to do a third show, I would have to script it. So it's been like that from the start. So back to today's case. Today's case is called Rideshare Disaster. And for me personally, there's a lot of cases that I feature here on the channel where I feel like there's something for us to learn. This case certainly has some of those lessons. As a matter of fact, Christy has written in a bunch of tips about rideshare safety. They're going to be in this script as well. I use rideshares all the time. I think it's really important for people that do that we consider an instance kind of like what happened in this case and make sure that we don't let that happen to us or the people that we loved. Samantha Josephson had made many friends in the 4 years she attended the University of Southern Carolina. Originally from New Jersey, Samantha was known to friends and locals as Sammy. The 21-year-old was described as very kind, a ball of energy who brightened every room. In just a few short months, she would be graduating with a political science degree and would go on in the fall to attend law school at Drexel University in Pennsylvania. Because Samantha's time at the University of South Carolina was winding down, she decided to spend a night out with friends at a very popular spot near campus called Columbia's 5 Points Bar District. Very early in the morning, on March 30th, 2019, she decided to call it a night and walked out of the Bird Dog Bar while requesting an Uber to take her home. It would take almost 12 hours for people to realize something was wrong. Later that day, Samantha's coworkers at the Liberty Tap Room grew concerned when she didn't report for her breakfast shift, and by 1:30 p.m., her friends, who had been calling and searching for her, called police to report her missing. Shortly after, officers met with the group at The Hub on campus in downtown Columbia, an apartment complex where Samantha had been living. She was now officially a missing person. Authorities began collecting information on Samantha's last known whereabouts and asked for photos they could distribute to local media outlets. They knew what she had been wearing: black jeans, light shoes, and an orange top, and luckily, they were also able to find surveillance footage from that night to release as well. The footage showed Samantha at around 2 a.m. that Friday, waiting along Hardin Street for her Uber ride. As revelers walk by, a black Chevy Impala pulls up close to where Samantha is standing. She sees the car and immediately gets into the back seat. After that, the Impala pulls away. Now, investigators have to find out who was driving the Impala. After contacting both Uber and Lyft, they learned that this car didn't work for either of the rideshare services. Did Samantha know the person in the car, or did she get in it by mistake? It would only take 24 hours for investigators canvassing the 5 Points area to spot a car matching the description they had. At 3 a.m. on Saturday, a canine patrol officer spotted a black Impala just 2 blocks from where Samantha had disappeared. The officer pulled over the car, and as he approached the driver, asked him to step out of the vehicle. Without warning, the man jumped out of the car and fled on foot. They now had a suspect. He was a local man, 24-year-old Nathaniel Rowland, who was a resident of the New Zion area in Clarendon County. Authorities now had the car in question with any evidence it had to offer, but they still didn't know where to find Samantha. As investigators continued their search, 2 turkey hunters 70 miles away in Clarendon County were walking through a field 40 feet off a dirt road when they discovered a body. By the description of the clothes the person was wearing, authorities soon realized the woman the hunters found was indeed Samantha. Back at the car, investigators were processing the Impala and had found blood in the trunk and on the passenger seat. Tests confirmed that the blood was Samantha's. Investigators also found window cleaner, bleach, antibacterial wipes, and Samantha's phone. They soon realized that the child's safety locks had been activated. This would have effectively trapped her in the back of the car without someone opening the door from the outside. Columbia Police Chief Skip Holbrook said an investigation determined Rowland was driving the Chevy Impala Friday morning and pulled up near the Bird Dog Bar at 2:09 a.m. Based on the surveillance video, investigators believe Samantha was waiting on the street for her Uber ride and entered Rowland's car by mistake. They also determined that after Samantha got into Rowland's car, he attacked her, causing numerous wounds to her head, neck, face, upper body, leg, and foot that were listed in the autopsy report as multiple sharp force injuries. It hasn't been determined what Rowland used to attack her. Investigators also discovered that Rowland had previously lived near the area where Samantha's body was found, a place described as very difficult to get to unless you knew how to get there. Quote, "Our hearts are broken," Columbia Police Chief Skip Holbrook said at a weekend news conference shortly after meeting Samantha's relatives who arrived from New Jersey. "They're broken. There is nothing tougher than to stand before a family and explain how a loved one was murdered." In a message to students, the university encouraged the use of campus shuttles and urged students to exercise best practices when using services like Uber and Lyft. They explained that a customer should always match the vehicle description and license plate with the information in the app and should ask the driver to say my name before entering the vehicle. Uber has also responded saying that they have worked with law enforcement and college campuses across the country since 2017 to educate the public on how to avoid fake rideshare drivers. They have also released a list of tips that riders can follow for their safety. Tip number 1, plan ahead by thinking about where you're headed and reviewing the safety features in the app so you know how to use them. Tip number 2, request your ride inside and avoid spending unnecessary time outside alone with your phone in your hand. Tip number 3, be sure to get in the right car by checking that the license plate, driver photo, and driver name all match what's listed in the app. Tip number 4, be a backseat rider. If you're riding alone, sit in the back seat for a quick, safe exit. Unfortunately, in this case, if there are those child safety locks in the back seat area, you still could potentially run into trouble with that tip. But I think in general, they're saying that, especially if there is a situation where you're going to be attacked, it's probably better for you to be in the back seat than sitting right next to the person, or if they're going to pull a weapon on you. Tip number 5, buckle up. Tip number 6, share your trip details with a friend by tapping share status while en route. This will share your driver's name, photo, license plate, and location with a friend or family member. They can then track your trip and see your ETA even without downloading the Uber app. Tip number 7, protect your personal information. There's no need to ever share your phone number or other contact information with your driver. Tip number 8, follow your intuition. If you ever feel you're in an emergency situation, call 911 immediately. Tip number 9, be kind and respectful to your driver. And tip number 10, give feedback on your trip to help the companies follow up with appropriate actions on any reports of conduct that violates the community guidelines. Samantha's father, Seymour Josephson, said at a vigil for his daughter Sunday, March 31st, that he believes more pressure should be put on the rideshare companies like Uber and Lyft to enhance their safety measures. A Democratic lawmaker plans to file a bill Tuesday, April 2nd that would require apps like Lyft and Uber to display illuminated stickers in their windshields to make it easier for riders to identify vehicles driving for their services. He also told his daughter's friends that they can help by always taking rides or walking around town in groups of 2 or more, because there is safety in numbers. If there is somebody else in that car, there is actually a chance, said Josephson. Samantha's parents said they had planned to come to Columbia on Saturday to see their daughter in the place she loved one last time before she graduated and moved on to law school in Philadelphia. They still came, but while her father went to a candlelight vigil in her honor, her mother went to the Richland County Jail for a hearing scheduled for the man charged with killing her daughter. Nathaniel Rowland waived his first court appearance, but has now been charged with murder and kidnapping and will face up to life in prison or the possibility of the death penalty. Under South Carolina law, kidnapping also carries up to 30 years in prison. Rowland may have decided not to appear, but a judge gave Marcy Josephson a chance to talk. She said, "His actions were senseless, wild, and unacceptable. Does he even know her name? Samantha Josephson. My daughter's name was Samantha Josephson. Don't ever forget her name. Shame on him." Case cracked. Terrible. Just absolutely terrible that a family has to face this, that another promising young life is taken out in a tragic way. There is a hashtag that is trending that is related to this case. It is hashtag say my name. I also just wanted to touch on, I use Lyft a lot. I don't use Uber a whole lot at all. And I see in some cars, they actually do have signs that light up on the front of the car that say Lyft. And they're even kind of color coded, and the application will show me that there's a Lyft driver coming and the sign in their window should be purple or should be green or whatever their color is. But on the back side of that sign, as you're actually getting into the car, if you look at it, there is this little kind of display on the back side that will say like, "Hi, John," or something like that. So in terms of the whole Say My Name campaign, Lyft has a great tool for that. I don't know if they're making all their drivers use it. I don't think they are, because I've been in many Lyft rides that don't have that feature, but maybe that's a good way to help with this, is making sure that all their drivers have that device. But outside of that, these tips are great. Always make sure you're checking that license plate. Luckily, out here, I'm used to doing that because in the metro areas, there's a lot of Lyft and Uber cars coming and going, and you can't just see the Lyft sign and know, oh, that must be my car, because there's a bunch of other people out there waiting for their rides too. So I'm pretty used to double checking the plate with the app and the car that's pulling up. But all these other tips, I think they're great. Just make sure that the person does say your name. Most trained or experienced, I guess you would say, drivers seem to do that as you're getting in. They'll kind of double check and they'll say, John, and you could say their name back. I think that's a good exchange just to start it off and make sure that you are getting in the right vehicle. But even outside of Uber and Lyft, there's just something about this case that really reminds me of the Claremont murders, which we've covered on this channel before. And in that case, it seemed like someone was driving around in a vehicle that looked a lot like a taxi. So if people are looking to do this, sometimes they can get imaginative. And I don't think it would be out of the realm of possibility, even if Uber and Lyft do start using stickers in their window that are light up in some way. If someone really wants to do this and he wants to fool someone, how hard is it going to be for him to mimic that sticker or that light in some way? So leaning on that as a fix for all this, I don't feel great about. I think the tips are much stronger than that. You have to be aware, you have to be engaged, and we all need to do everything we can to avoid situations just like this. I just feel absolutely terrible that this family is facing this at this time. But I did want to share it with you guys because I do think it's a story worth sharing. I think there's a lot that all of us could learn from it. And if you have some more tips, thoughts, or feedback on this, let's share those in the comments below so that we can take care of other brain scratchers and try to do our best to keep our community safe. Before I let you guys go today, I have to thank several new patrons, and I just want to say I'm not always the best person at asking for help, and I'm really moved that I just mentioned in a previous video that, YouTube is starting to demonetize me like crazy. I don't know why. I've heard from other true crimers that are saying the same thing, but a bunch of you kicked onto Patreon, and it really moves me. And I have to be better about letting you guys know when I'm going through stuff like that, because it kind of feels like a kick in the teeth when all of a sudden the company that you're supposed to be a partner with is not happy with your content in some way. But then to see, in a few days, 10 more people jumped onto Patreon, you know what? Maybe I'll take that kick in the teeth so I can take the hug from the rest of you over on the Patreon front. So I just want to thank you guys for that. And I'll try to be more open. I'm not great about asking for this kind of help, but I do want to keep this work going. I do want to keep the great donations that we do and the channel afloat and all that stuff. So I'm going to try to be better about asking for help. But let's give a very big thank you to new patrons: Jason Seaton, Ariana, Denisa Hinkle. I hope I'm saying that right, Denisa. Natasha Nimo. Hope I'm saying that right, Natasha. Brandy Restina. Selena Moffat. I know you, Selena. Thank you so much for the support. And Shane. On top of that, we had several that increased their pledges. Thank you so much, Irene Vasquez, Laura Rodriguez, and Darcy, for increasing your pledges. You guys are awesome. I need your guys' help to continue doing this. I so appreciate that you're there helping me do this. If you want to do the same, head on over to www.lordandarts.com. You can join Patreon. You can contribute via PayPal. You can buy stuff from the Spreadshirt store. You can buy the audiobook. There's all kinds of different ways that you can help fund what I'm doing here, keep me here doing it, and keep me helping other families, which is ultimately what makes me feel good from day to day about this work. So thank you guys. Take care, and I'll see you back here on Wednesday with a brand new episode of Searchlight on the Lord and Arts channel.